My husband Nathan and I had been trying for a baby for years, each failed attempt driving a deeper wedge between us. Our once joyful conversations had turned into a suffocating silence. That evening, as I prepared dinner, Nathan walked in, his face etched with resolve. He sat down and said words that would forever echo in my heart. "Emily, I can't do this anymore. I've met someone else, and she's pregnant with my child." I felt my knees weaken. "But Nathan, what about us? All our plans?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "There's no us anymore, Em. I need a real family. You just can't give me that," he replied, his voice as cold as the chill seeping through the window. His words cut through me. I was not just losing my husband, but also my dream of being a mother. The nights that followed were sleepless, filled with tears and unanswered questions. I was haunted by his parting words, a cruel reminder of my supposed inadequacy. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Nathan's words, sharp as knives, were relentless. "I should have known better than to waste my years on a barren woman," he spat out during one of our meetings. Julie, his pregnant mistress, stood smirking beside him. I signed the papers, each stroke of the pen feeling like an end to a chapter I had so dearly held on to. I left my job at the library, the place where Nathan and I had first met, and moved back to my parents' house. The walls of my old bedroom, once a canvas of teenage dreams, now felt like the boundaries of my failure. The loneliness was suffocating, and the societal whispers of being childless added to my agony. But amidst this despair, a small ray of hope emerged. A routine visit to the doctor revealed a truth that would change everything. I wasn't the one with fertility issues. It had always been Nathan. This revelation brought a bittersweet sense of liberation. I wasn't the flawed one in our marriage. Armed with this truth, I began to see a path forward. It was time to rebuild, to rediscover who I was beyond Nathan's shadow. In the quietness of Maplewood, I started piecing back my life. It was a slow, often painful journey, but with each passing day, I found strength in my newfound independence. I was determined to rise from the ashes of my broken marriage, stronger and more resilient than ever. Living back in my childhood home in Maplewood felt like stepping into a time capsule, yet everything was tinted with the gray hues of my recent past. My parents, though supportive, often tiptoed around me, their eyes reflecting a mix of concern and unspoken questions. I took a job at a local cafe, a far cry from the library where every shelf whispered memories of Nathan. One crisp morning, as I served coffee to a regular customer, I realized how much I had changed. Gone was the woman who dreamt of cradling her own child, replaced by someone hardened by betrayal. Yet in that hardness, there was an emerging sense of resilience. My transformation wasn't just emotional. A few months after the divorce, I discovered something that turned my world upside down again. But this time in a different way. It turned out I wasn't infertile. The problem had always been with Nathan. The revelation was like a storm clearing the skies. All those years of self-blame, the guilt that I carried, dissolved. I was not the broken one. With this newfound clarity, a spark of anger ignited within me. Nathan had not only left me for someone else, but had also made me believe I was the reason we couldn't have a child. Fueled by this anger, I began to plot my revenge. It was not something dark or sinister, but a desire to confront Nathan and Julie with the truth, to see the realization dawn in their eyes that the fault had never been mine. The opportunity came unexpectedly. I learned through old mutual friends that Nathan and Julie, now his wife, were organizing a charity event at a local community center. It would be a public setting, a perfect stage for my unspoken play. I arrived at the event dressed inconspicuously, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I spotted them across the room, Nathan looking dapper in his suit and Julie, radiant, holding their daughter, Lily. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to them, my steps measured and firm. "Hello, Nathan, Julie," I said, my voice steady. Their expressions shifted from surprise to disdain. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Nathan asked, a sneer forming on his lips. I looked straight into his eyes, the eyes that once promised forever. "I came to congratulate you, Nathan, on your family, but there's something you should know." "And what's that?" Julie chimed in, her voice laced with sarcasm. "The child we never had, Nathan, it wasn't because of me. I'm not the infertile one," I said, the words tasting like freedom. The color drained from Nathan's face, his confident posture faltering. Julie's eyes widened in shock, her grip on Lily tightening. "I thought you should know the truth. Goodbye, Nathan." "Goodbye, Julie," I said, turning away, leaving them in a sea of unspoken words and dawning realizations. As I walked away, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't a dramatic showdown or a vindictive scheme, but in that moment I reclaimed my dignity and truth. I walked out of that community center not as a victim, but as a survivor, ready to write the next chapter of my life on my own terms. Months had passed since my encounter with Nathan and Julie at the charity event. That moment, liberating as it was, had stirred something in me. A need for a closure I hadn't realized I craved. Life in Maplewood carried on, my days at the cafe filled with the familiar hum of coffee machines and casual chatter, but my thoughts often drifted to that day. Then came the unexpected invitation to my niece's birthday party at the city aquarium. The aquarium, a place of wonder and serenity, soon became the stage for a confrontation I never anticipated. As I meandered through the crowds, admiring the dance of colorful fish behind glass walls, a familiar, contemptuous voice pierced through the tranquility. Well, if it isn't Emily, still wandering alone in life?" I turned to see Nathan, Julie, and a young girl, presumably their daughter, standing a few feet away. My heart raced, but this time not from fear or surprise, but from a sense of indignation. "What brings you here, Nathan?" I asked, my voice calm yet edged with defiance. "We're here for Lily's school project. Unlike some, we're a proper family," Nathan sneered, his eyes scanning my solitary figure with disdain. Julie chimed in, her voice dripping with false pity. "It must be hard, seeing what you could never have." Their words, meant to wound, only fueled my resolve. "I'm here for my niece's birthday, and for your information, I can have children. The issue was never with me." The smugness on Nathan's face faltered, replaced by an unmistakable flash of surprise. Julie's expression twisted, a mix of confusion and anger. "It's sad, really, how you cling to these lies to feel better about your lonely existence," Nathan retorted, attempting to regain his composure. Before I could reply, a small voice piped up from behind me. "Aunt Emily, who are these people?" I turned to see my niece, Anna, looking up at me with curious eyes. Her innocent interruption was like a breath of fresh air, dissipating the tension. "These are just some old acquaintances, sweetie," I replied, taking her hand. "Let's go see the dolphins, shall we?" As we walked away, I heard Julie's hushed, venomous voice. Can't even admit her own failures. Pathetic. Their words no longer had the power they once did. I had moved beyond their reach, their insults mere echoes of a past I had overcome. My focus was on the present, on the joy in Anna's eyes as we watched the graceful dolphins. That day at the aquarium, amidst the beauty of marine life, I realized that my worth wasn't defined by Nathan's perceptions or society's expectations. I was more than a chapter in someone else's story. I was the author of my own. In the weeks following the aquarium incident, I found myself reflecting on my encounters with Nathan and Julie. Their attempts to belittle me had lost their sting, but a desire for a more definitive closure lingered. I wanted them to see me not just as someone who had moved on, but as someone who had triumphed over the adversities they had thrown at me. The perfect opportunity presented itself unexpectedly. News broke out that Nathan's company was facing financial troubles. This, coupled with rumors of strife in his marriage, painted a picture of a life far from perfect. It was then I decided to attend the high school reunion, knowing Nathan and Julie would be there. It was time they saw the new me, not just heard about it. Dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, I entered the reunion with a confidence I never knew I had. The room buzzed with the chatter of old classmates, but it fell silent as Nathan and Julie entered. He looked older, the lines of stress evident on his face, while Julie clung to his arm, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I mingled, catching up with old friends, feeling their surprised glances as they took in my transformation. Then, as I had anticipated, I found myself face to face with Nathan and Julie. "Emily, you actually came. Thought you'd be too busy with your—" "What do you do now?" Nathan sneered, his words laced with condescension. "I manage a cafe in Maplewood. It's fulfilling, more than you'd think," I replied, my voice steady. Julie laughed, a hollow sound. "A cafe manager? How quaint! We heard about your little scene at the aquarium, still trying to convince the world about your fertility?" Their words, meant to sting, fell flat. "Actually, I'm here to enjoy the reunion, not to discuss my personal life." But since you brought it up, yes, I can have children. The issue was never with me, and I'm content with my life, which is more than I can say for some. The look of shock on their faces was gratifying, but I didn't linger to savor it. I excused myself, leaving them standing amidst a crowd that had subtly turned its attention to our exchange. Later that evening, as the reunion was winding down, Nathan approached me, a hint of desperation in his eyes. "Emily, about what you said earlier." "I meant every word, Nathan. I've moved on. I suggest you do the same," I said, cutting him off. He looked at me, a mix of anger and something that resembled regret, before turning away. Julie watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. As I left the reunion, I felt a sense of finality. I had faced Nathan and Julie not as the woman they thought they had broken, but as someone who had risen above it all. My past with Nathan was now just that, the past. I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, on my terms. The months following the high school reunion were a period of profound personal growth for me. I had faced Nathan and Julie not once but twice, and each time I had emerged stronger. My cafe in Maplewood had become a haven, a place where I could pour my energy and creativity. But fate, it seemed, wasn't quite done with our intertwined stories. One afternoon, as I was arranging pastries in the display case, my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Hesitantly, I answered, and was met with a voice I hadn't expected to hear again, Nathan's. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. "Why are you calling me, Nathan?" "I thought we made it clear at the reunion that we've moved on," I replied, my guard instantly up. "It's about Julie. She's left me, took Lily with her, and the company's gone under. I'm ruined," he confessed, his voice breaking. A part of me felt a twinge of pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of ironic justice. "I'm sorry to hear that, Nathan, but why tell me?" "I thought maybe there's still something. We had good times, remember?" His voice was a mix of desperation and hope. "Nathan, those times are long gone. You made your choices. I've made mine," I said firmly. There was a pause, a silence filled with unspoken words. "I guess I deserved this," he finally said, a note of resignation in his voice. "You should focus on rebuilding your life, Nathan. Goodbye." I ended the call, a sense of final closure washing over me. The news of Nathan's downfall spread through our small town. Some expressed sympathy, but many remembered how he had treated me, how he had left for Julie when he thought the grass was greener. Karma, it seemed, had come full circle. In the weeks that followed, I poured my heart into the cafe, creating a space of warmth and welcome for anyone who walked through its doors. My past with Nathan became just a chapter in my life, a story of resilience and renewal. As I closed the cafe one evening, I took a moment to reflect. The journey had been long and often painful, but it had led me to a place of peace and self-acceptance. Nathan's choices had led him down his path, and I had forged my own. In the end, I realized that the best revenge was living well, finding happiness in my own achievements, and leaving the past where it belonged. I had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, ready to embrace whatever the future held.
This vacation house is only for my mom and dad. Your parents can't stay here. My husband declared, surprising me with his words after buying a fancy vacation house worth $1 million. So that's what this is all about. I realized his intentions and felt fed up. "Okay, but you'll regret this decision," I warned him. "Never come near me again," Terry smirked, folding his arms. "If that's how it is, I won't be nice either. I'll make him sorry. My name's Kathy. I married Robert 4 years ago, and we've been living together happily. We don't really have any hobbies, so we've been saving a lot of money. If I had to pick one thing we splurge on, it's probably making fancy coffee on weekends. Oh, by the way, isn't your mom's birthday coming up soon?" I asked Robert while holding a freshly brewed cup of coffee. We're both in our mid-30s. Robert's parents just turned 60 this year, a year before mine. What if we give them a spa getaway as a birthday gift? It could be a lovely treat, don't you think? I suggested. Robert thought it was a good idea, saying, "That sounds nice. I'll check with my parents if they have any specific wishes. If not, we'll go with a spa retreat. It's like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone." I didn't mean it that way, I clarified. "I know, just kidding. Next time I see my parents, I'll bring it up with them. Kathy, can you find some good spas? Robert asked me. Sure thing. How about we join them on the trip? It'd be a nice change, I suggested. 2 weeks went by, and my mother-in-law's birthday was approaching quickly. We should book a spa soon, otherwise, we might not make it in time for my father-in-law's birthday. Did you talk to your parents? I asked anxiously. My husband replied casually, Oh, I forgot to mention. I already checked with them, so no need to book the spa. Oh, really? That's a relief. But what did they say they wanted? I was eager to decide the gift together, but my husband seemed bothered by the question. I'll take care of it. It's my parents' 60th birthday. You don't have to worry about it, Kathy, he said, dismissing my involvement. Robert's words took me aback. He'd never dismissed me like this before. That wasn't very nice, I said, feeling emotional. Why won't you tell me? We've always chosen gifts together. We'd even picked gifts for each other's parents in the past. So why, on such an important occasion like their 60th birthday, would you shut me out like this? I don't understand, I said, frustration creeping in. Normally, I'm pretty calm and don't raise my voice often, but my husband remained stubborn. In the end, he wouldn't budge on telling me what his parents wanted. Since then, there's been tension between us, and we only talk about necessary things. Even when we drink our morning coffee, the silence hangs heavy. The day before my mother-in-law's birthday, my husband finally spoke to me after a long silence. We're going out tomorrow to celebrate Mom's 60th. Get ready, Kathy. We're staying overnight, so be prepared, he informed me suddenly. I panicked. What? Where are we going? You should have told me earlier. If we're staying overnight, I need time to prepare, I protested. I just told you, didn't I? You're going to be surprised. My husband replied cheerfully, contrasting my anxiety. The next morning, we hopped into the car early to pick up my in-laws. They were bursting with excitement from the moment we saw them. I'm so thrilled. I never imagined celebrating my birthday like this. Thank you so much, they exclaimed. Isn't it wonderful? My husband asked. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert, I replied, feeling a bit awkward since I hadn't been part of choosing the gift. Even when my in-laws expressed their gratitude, I could only respond vaguely. Then, unexpectedly, my husband spoke up. It's all thanks to Kathy. Thank you, he said, supporting me. I was touched by his consideration, despite our recent disagreements. It felt like we were getting back to our old selves. My mood lifted, and I decided to enjoy the journey to our destination. We arrived at a beautiful cabin nestled in the woods. The entrance was spacious, and the living room had huge glass windows giving it a charming appeal surrounded by trees. The cabin felt like it blended perfectly with nature. There were 3 bedrooms and even a hot tub in the bathroom. This is where we're staying. It's so beautiful, I said excitedly to my husband, expressing regret for my earlier attitude. I never imagined Robert would pick such an amazing place. I don't think I could have found such a gem myself. Trusting Robert with a decision was definitely the right call. I'm sorry for being so cranky lately, I admitted, feeling a surge of excitement as I took in the beauty of the cabin. Then, out of the blue, my husband said something unexpected. It's no big deal. If it were just me, I wouldn't have been able to afford this cabin. It's all thanks to Kathy that we have it, he said. When I was suddenly speechless as my mind raced with questions, my in-laws chimed in. Thank you, Kathy. We never expected such a wonderful gift, did we? We were thinking about getting a new place for ourselves when we turned 60, even considering living together. But remember, we decided against that, right? So, we thought a cabin would be perfect, and we've been discussing it with Robert since he got married. It was true that I turned down the idea of living together once. I wanted to savor our time as a couple, and my in-laws were still healthy, so I felt it was too soon for us to move in together. Robert agreed, and we decided we'd move in together when my in-laws needed assistance. But I never expected them to request a new home as a gift for their 60th birthday, let alone a cabin. That felt like a bit much. Trying to keep my panic at bay, I turned to my husband, Robert. You're kidding, right? There's no way we could afford such a beautiful cabin. Why spring a surprise on me? It's your mom's birthday. The surprise should be for her. It's not a joke. We really bought this cabin, my husband replied. Everything seemed to blur before my eyes in a daze. Wait a minute. I had no idea about any of this. And it's not fair to just spring it on me like this. You just said it was a lovely cabin. It's ours. That's not the point. How much did this vacation home cost? I vented my frustration at him. He dropped a bombshell. $1 million. What? $1 million and you spent it on my parents' 60th birthday. I couldn't believe it. The amount was staggering, leaving me reeling. To make matters worse, my husband revealed another shocking fact. We couldn't get a loan for $1 million property in both our names, so I used all our savings since we got married, the joint account, as a down payment. At this point, I was beyond shocked and simply speechless. How could he make such a selfish decision without even consulting me? I couldn't comprehend it at all. Despite my disbelief, my husband continued casually, "Well, it's done now. There's no going back. And I did take your preference of not living together into account, didn't I? With this vacation home, we can do whatever we want. Our vacations will be even better, right?" His nonchalant attitude was incredibly frustrating. "But now that it's done, there's no going back," Robert said, echoing my own thoughts. The vacation home was undeniably beautiful, and it would certainly enhance our holiday experiences. "Fine, it's already done, so there's no point blowing on it. But you should have at least talked to me about it," I said with a sigh. Surprisingly, my husband's mood lifted and he chuckled. "You're right. I should have consulted you. I'm sorry. I wanted it to be a surprise for you too, Kathy. You're something else." Learning that Robert had taken out a joint mortgage without telling me, even using our shared savings, was a shock. Let's just accept it and see it as a good investment, I decided. With that resolution, I chose to enjoy the lavish celebration for my mother-in-law's birthday and our 2-day stay at the villa. As I brewed a cup of coffee, I found myself lost in memories of our time at the villa. Despite the initial shock, it truly was a magnificent place. The wood-burning stove in the living room especially stood out, promising cozy winter evenings. Feeling content, I turned to Robert. "Hey, when can we go back to the villa? I want to pick out some new dishes for it." "Yeah, I'll ask my parents about it," he replied. "Can't we just go by ourselves?" I suggested technically, the villa is in our names, even though it was a gift for my parents' 60th anniversary. It wouldn't be right if they already had plans, would it? A sense of unease crept over me. Despite being in our names, I worried that practically, it might end up being more like my in-laws' property. Thinking fast, I proposed, "Since it's our villa, can't we invite my parents to join us too?" "Yeah, if they're free," he replied vaguely, but at least he didn't outright refuse. That was a relief. It meant the villa wouldn't just become my in-laws' property. However, my optimism was short-lived. For the past 6 months, I hadn't been allowed to spend the night at the villa. I could visit during the day, drop off my in-laws, prepare food, and then head back home, only to return the next day to pick them up, clean up, and drive them back. This routine had persisted despite my numerous complaints, with Robert always finding some excuse or even yelling at me. But today, I wasn't going to give up, especially since my parents' birthday was approaching. "Robert, my father's birthday is in 2 months. Can't we invite them to the villa?" "It's our villa," I stressed, hoping to appeal to him. But his response was the same as always. "If my parents don't have plans, it'll be the same story. We haven't spent a single night at the villa in the 6 months since we bought it. Your parents always get priority, but it's our villa and we should come first. Besides, I'm the one paying the mortgage and the down payment. My parents should have their turn too. Today, I'm not giving in. I've had enough," I asserted firmly, only to be met with a scowl from Robert. "Shut up. That vacation house is only for my parents. I won't allow your parents to use it. I bet that was your plan all along, wasn't it? No wonder you bought it without telling me," he accused. The patience I had clung to shattered in my heart, leaving behind a sense of brokenness. "I'll never forgive you," I vowed. "Don't think you can act so selfishly without consequences," I challenged my husband. "Fine. If that's how it is, I won't hold back anymore. Let's get a divorce. What? You're so petty, he retorted. Well, whatever. My parents appreciate me for buying that vacation home, and my mom can handle the housework. I'll be just fine without you. And if we're divorcing, I won't let you near that vacation house. Is that clear? With a smug look, he crossed his arms triumphantly. I felt foolish for falling for his smooth words, but it was too late for regrets. All that remained was to seek my revenge. In a low voice, I pressed my husband. Are you sure you'll regret this? Because I won't hesitate. Fine, it's settled then. Never shove your face in front of me again, he replied. The next day, I filed for divorce, and it was accepted without any issues. I decided to walk back to my parents' house. A few months later, I received a call from Robert's house. When I answered, he sounded panicked. I'm Kathy, what do you want? We don't have anything to talk about, he said in a frantic tone. In response to my cold response, he yelled back, I tried calling your cell phone. Why did you answer? Some person claiming to be your lawyer showed up at my house today. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Can you explain it to me properly? Don't you understand? I replied calmly. What's there to understand? He snapped back. The lawyer was right. Since we're divorced, I don't plan on paying the mortgage anymore. If you don't agree, I might sell the vacation house. That's it. But the vacation house is in both our names, even after the divorce. Isn't it fair for you to keep paying the mortgage? I questioned. My ex-husband seemed at a loss for words. Despite being in both our names, I'm not allowed to use it, right? So why should I keep paying for it? That doesn't make sense to me, he stated calmly. No, it's a joint property, so we should both contribute, I argued. This conversation isn't going anywhere. That's why I consulted a lawyer. If you're going to stick to your stance, I'm ending this call. If you need anything else, talk to my lawyer. I don't have time to deal with this unreasonable behavior. I have my own affairs to attend to, he said firmly. Wait, hold on, I interjected. I resigned from my job, he informed me. What? Why? I asked. It was probably my father's doing, right? He's an executive in a top-tier company with many connections. Robert's company president is one of them, he explained. It seems my father had a word with Robert's company president about his behavior towards me. How can we tolerate such behavior in our company? The president must have exclaimed in anger. I don't know all the details, but I heard that Robert chose to resign voluntarily. I'm certain there was some intervention from Robert's company president behind the scenes. Please help me, Robert pleaded tearfully. My coworkers started giving me hostile looks. I made the decision to resign. I found a new job, but the salary is lower than before. I can't manage the mortgage payments on my own. Your father sees all this, right? Then shouldn't he take responsibility and keep paying the mortgage? He's so selfish, I lamented. How much further will he go to satisfy his own desires? I couldn't bear his selfishness any longer. Sure, my father might have played a role in me quitting my job, but you, Robert, are the one who started it all, aren't you? Don't try to twist the narrative to fit your agenda. You're the one in the wrong for tampering with our joint property just to impress your parents. You brought this upon yourself. I never imagined it would come to this. You're facing the consequences of your actions. I hope you suffer in the depths of mortgage hell, you selfish jerk. I heard his desperate plea, but I hung up the phone without giving it another thought. In the months that followed, I worked with a lawyer and managed to extricate myself from the mortgage for the vacation house. Eventually, Robert couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments alone, and the property ended up being sold due to its decreased value. It appeared that Robert had accumulated debt and was now struggling to make ends meet in a modest apartment. Even his in-laws were shocked by the turned events, and Robert's parents found themselves facing scrutiny from the community for losing the vacation house they had once bragged about. Meanwhile, I found fulfillment in my role as the vice president of my father's company, leading busy and rewarding days. The happiest moments now come when the three of us, myself, my husband, and our daughter, visit the vacation house on our days off, enjoying moments of relaxation with a cup of coffee. Hi, I'm Luz, and I'm going to be 34 this year. After finishing college, I got a job at a big company that many people know about. They paid me a good amount of money, especially for someone new to the job, but it meant I had to travel a lot for work and often had to do extra hours. Even on holidays, it was tough, but I liked feeling like I was doing something important. When I was 28, I got promoted to be in charge of a whole department, which was pretty cool, especially since it's not common for women to move up that quickly. About 4 years ago, I got married to my boyfriend, Brian. We've been together for 2 years after meeting through a friend. I wasn't really thinking about getting into a relationship, but my friend thought it was a good idea to introduce us. I never really imagined myself getting married or having kids, but Brian was really keen on it. He said he wanted to get married soon and have kids before we got too old. I wasn't ready for that at all. I had just gotten promoted, and the idea of getting married and having kids felt too rushed. So whenever Brian brought it up, I told him we needed more time to know each other better and that marriage meant thinking about more than just the two of us. Brian then suggested, okay, let's wait 2 years before getting married. By then, we'll really know each other right. At first, I didn't think we'd last that long, but surprisingly, we did end up dating for 2 years before tying the knot. Throughout our relationship, Brian was loyal, didn't have any gambling habits, and always treated me kindly and sincerely. I admired his strong work ethic and how he always put effort into everything he did. But there was one thing that bothered me a bit: his big ego. Whenever someone at work, especially a senior, pointed out his mistakes, he'd come home ranting about how he didn't need to be told what to do and that he always thought his way was the best. Listening to him, it was obvious that he was being criticized for his errors, but it seemed like he couldn't handle being corrected, whether it came from a superior or not. When we decided to have a dinner with both our families to celebrate, Brian chose a really expensive restaurant that cost over $200 per person. He then asked me to split the bill with him because it was so pricey. I suggested going somewhere cheaper, but Brian insisted, saying it was important to make a good impression. I felt frustrated because it seemed like he was worried people would think he was cheap if we went somewhere less fancy. I thought to myself, if he's worried about that, he should pay for all himself. But Brian explained that his salary couldn't cover the whole bill for 8 people, maybe just 3 at most. So he asked me to cover the remaining 5, meaning I had to pay more than half. It didn't seem fair to me, especially since we were both bringing 4 people from each of our families, totaling 8. Brian wanted us to go to a restaurant that was expensive, but he couldn't even cover his own family's part of the bill. I wasn't happy when Brian suggested the expensive dinner plan, and I was even more confused when he announced to everyone at the dinner that he would pay for everything. Although I had doubts, everyone seemed pleased, so I decided to go along with it and let him take charge. But looking back, I think I might have made a mistake. I regret not reconsidering my marriage. After we got married, his behavior towards me changed completely. He started talking down to me all the time. Before we tied the knot, he promised to help with household chores since I was busy with work. But once we were married, he said things like, "What would people think if they see a man doing laundry? That's a woman's job. I work hard outside, so I deserve to relax at home." He never lifted a finger to help, no matter how busy I was. His attitude annoyed me, but I could handle doing the housework. What really bothered me was that Brian was sending all his money to his parents, even though they were farmers and struggling to make ends meet. It seemed like Brian was their sole financial support. Within 6 months of getting married, he stopped contributing any money to our household expenses and gave everything to his parents. I once told Brian, "It's not fair for me to cover all our living expenses with my salary alone." But he argued back, saying, "How can you say that when my family needs help? They're your family too. Plus, you make more money than me, so you should be fine." He didn't listen to my concerns. When he talked to his parents on the phone, he'd reassure them, saying, "Don't worry, I'm taking care of everything with my salary." I won't let Louise interfere, but the truth was he was giving them all his money. He had nothing left for himself and started asking me for pocket money, saying, "Can you give me about $200? I can't even afford lunch. I reached a breaking point and suggested, let's set a monthly limit on how much we send to your parents. You need to figure out how to cover your own expenses. Brian would agree, but he kept sending all this salary to his parents. That was something I couldn't tolerate anymore. One day I had to go on a business trip for about 2 weeks. What about my food and laundry for 2 weeks? Even though Brian knew my job required frequent travel, feeling annoyed at his immaturity, I told him, figure it out yourself. You're an adult. If you can't handle it, why don't you go stay with your parents while I'm away? You'll be fine there, right? Brian reluctantly agreed. When I returned home 2 weeks later, I found Brian's sister Elizabeth there. She lived a bit far from us, and we hadn't seen each other since our wedding day. I wondered why she was there, and Elizabeth, seeing my expression, said, "Hi, Louise, it's been a while." "Oh, right, about the money? It was a big help." "Thank you so much," she smiled brightly, saying things that didn't make sense to me. Without even unpacking, I asked Elizabeth, "What money? What are you talking about?" She replied without hesitation, Brian said that since you had some savings, he'd give me money for my business startup. He assured me not to worry because you had at least $1 million. I was completely baffled. Just then, Brian walked in, holding my bank passbook and seal. When he saw my expression, he said, "Oh, welcome back. Perfect timing. I'm going to give your savings to Elizabeth. You know she's a nail artist, right? She's been wanting to open her own shop. She's been saving up, but she's still short about $1 million. I remember that you've had savings since before we were married. Exactly $1 million. So I told her she could have it. With a smile, he handed the passbook and seal to Elizabeth, saying, "You're lucky. This will help make your dream come true. Show some gratitude, okay?" I couldn't hold back anymore. I snapped, "What are you talking about? That's my money. Why are you deciding this on your own? I could understand if you said you'd lend it. We need a legal agreement and a plan to pay it back, right? You can't just give away someone else's savings without any discussion." I grabbed the passbook and seal back from Elizabeth. Brian looked at me and said, "What? We're family, aren't we? It's silly to make legal agreements with family members. Plus, we're not lending it, we're giving it. You never spend any of your money because you're always working, right? It's a waste to just hoard it. Elizabeth has a dream. Isn't it more meaningful to use it to help her?" Then he gave me a stern look. Upon hearing Brian's words, I realized that he was impossible to reason with. I felt like continuing the conversation was pointless. But then Brian dropped a bombshell. "This money is too good for you, so I'm giving it to Elizabeth. You'd only waste it. You can just work and save up again. Understand? If you still want to argue, we get divorced." Seeing this as an opportunity, an idea struck me. Without hesitation, I replied, "Fine, let's get a divorce. I'll prepare the papers and send them to you. I'll come collect my things soon. Until the divorce is final, I'll stay at a hotel. Goodbye for now." With that, I grabbed my luggage from the business trip and swiftly left the house. Brian was shocked by my sudden decision. Soon after, he bombarded me with texts, begging me to come back and even saying that Elizabeth would forgive me if I gave her the money. I ignored all his messages. Who does he think he is? The next day, I went to the city hall and sent the signed divorce papers. Back home, despite Brian's protests, the divorce was finalized quicker than I had anticipated. A week after the divorce was official, I waited until Brian was at work and then moved my belongings to my new house. In his texts about the divorce papers, Brian had been rude, calling me names and saying we were now strangers. So I decided not to take most of the furniture and appliances from our old home. Instead, I deposited half of the small savings I had accumulated during our marriage into his bank account and left it there. That night, I received numerous calls from both Brian and Elizabeth. At first, I ignored them, knowing what they were about. But eventually, I answered, and Brian immediately started shouting, demanding to know why there was only $800 in the account. I calmly replied, "I split the property as we agreed. We originally had $1,600 in our joint account, right? So I left you with half of it, which is $800. And since all the furniture and appliances were bought after we got married, I left them behind. That's fair, isn't it? Just to clarify, I ended up with less than Brian, but he wasn't convinced. He insisted, "You're supposed to have $1 million in savings, right? So half of that, $500,000, should be mine. Plus, you got an inheritance from your grandfather, right? Half of that should be mine too." I was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. I had seen this coming. Otherwise, Brian wouldn't have agreed to the divorce so easily. Trying to hold back my laughter, I explained to Brian the division of property only applies to assets acquired during the marriage. My savings from before we were married and the inheritance I received aren't part of that. I consulted a lawyer and I divided our marital assets fairly. And remember, all the money we saved during our marriage was actually earned by me. You never contributed to our expenses, so be thankful I divided that. Brian accused me of lying, saying, "That can't be true. You're trying to trick me. Give me what's rightfully mine, or I'll sue you." He yelled desperately, but I remained calm and replied, "If you want to sue me, go ahead. I've been fair and I haven't deceived you. I'm not afraid of being sued." Hearing this, Brian panicked and said, "Wait, let's forget the divorce. I was wrong. Please come back to me." He completely changed his tune and begged for reconciliation. I responded firmly, "The divorce is finalized, and I have no intention of reconsidering. This is serious." Then I informed him, "If you plan on staying in our old place, you'll have to cover the rent yourself. It's about $1,800 per month, which you probably didn't realize because you've never paid it." Brian weakly admitted, "I can't afford that. If he can't pay, then it's his problem." After that, it seems Brian moved back in with his parents because he couldn't afford the rent. Unable to cover the moving costs, Brian sold the furniture and appliances I left behind. His parents thought Brian was making good money and welcomed him back, thinking it would make their lives easier. But without my income, Brian couldn't support them as much as before, and it seems he's struggling to adjust to living there. It seems Elizabeth's plans for her business were affected since she couldn't access any of my savings. She had to stop her preparations, causing her a lot of frustration. Brian also faced difficulties from Elizabeth, but that's not my concern anymore. I'm concentrating on my work and enjoying living independently. I've had my fill of marriage. Brian still sends messages expressing his desire to reconcile, but I ignore them completely. It's almost amusing to hear him update me on his situation from time to time, so I've let it slide. However, I'm planning to block him soon.
"Why are you even in this house? You're like a parasite living off of us." Here, as soon as the words left my mouth, my mother-in-law wasted no time throwing my belongings out of the window. I protested her irrational actions, asking, "What did you say? Don't you dare talk back to me. Can you pick my stuff up, please?" I pleaded. In response, my mother-in-law put a knife to my throat, paralyzing me with fear. "Get out, or this won't just be a game anymore." "I understand. If that's the case, I'll leave immediately," I replied. She gave me a week to vacate the premises, and I showed respect, though I couldn't suppress a hidden amusement beneath my straight face. Little did she know that I was the one supporting this house. Despite the torment I endured living with my mother-in-law, the fear from earlier vanished. I thought, if you've got what it takes, then prove it. "I'll give you a week. I expect you to be out of here by then," she declared. "Thank you," I said, showing respect, though laughter lingered just beneath the surface, hoping she didn't notice. I believed my departure would bring peace to our home. Little did she know, leaving her in the family home, I moved to a high-rise apartment. Eventually, she would learn the truth, but by then, it would be too late. I am Valerie Reynolds, applying my past work experience while working from home. It had been 5 years since I married Justin, expecting a peaceful and happy life. However, life took an unexpected turn when Justin had a construction site accident, resulting in the loss of most of the use of his dominant arm. Grateful that he survived, I found myself in the hospital room, tears streaming down my face. My mother-in-law arrived, seemingly oblivious to my presence, rushing to Justin's side. She suggested he stay with her, and I was taken aback by the proposal. When she noticed my surprise, she coldly questioned, "What's wrong? Do you have a problem with that?" "No, it's not that. It's just a bit sudden with my son like this. I can't leave everything up to you," I retorted, irritated by her words. Justin, however, expressed his trust in me, saying, "Valerie has been working hard all this time. That's why I trust her." Going forward, my mother-in-law, displeased, made an inaudible noise, but she couldn't sway my determination. "Well, anyway, come to the house as soon as you're discharged from the hospital. Of course, you're invited, Valerie." "That goes without saying," she said. I could predict what would happen if everything were left up to my mother-in-law. "By the way, Valerie, I'm leaving all the moving arrangements to you," my husband chimed in. "It's too much for one person to handle alone. Mom, please help her out." I hoped he would insist more strongly, but it seemed my mother-in-law had no intention of helping and ignored my husband's words. "I have my own things to do, you know." She smirked at me, unnoticed by my husband. It felt ominous, and so began our life living with my mother-in-law. A month later, my husband was discharged from the hospital, and I was busy with the move, leaving the task of picking him up to my mother-in-law. She came to me and said, "Aren't you done yet? I told you today was Justin's discharge day, and yet you didn't even come to pick him up. But that's because—" "You see, Justin," I started, but my husband interrupted. "Just like I said, right? This person only thinks about herself." My mother-in-law's intention was clear. She was trying to make me look bad in front of my husband. I decided not to take her obvious bait. Looking at my husband, he had a warm and understanding look in his eyes. "Come on, Mom, stop this. It's unsightly. I'm doing this for your sake." "Well, no one asked you to wait." The sight of my mother-in-law running after my husband was comically pathetic. When she noticed, she glared at me with an evil expression. "Not that her glare meant anything to me, Justin. You can just take it easy and relax at home from now on," I suggested. "That's impossible. My right hand might not work, but I don't want to be a burden on Valerie," he replied. "I can understand that, but you've just been discharged from the hospital." "Still, I can be satisfied if I don't do something." Justin was adamant. And initially, I had hoped he would take some time to relax, but seeing his determination, I decided to respect his wishes. Doing everything at once might be too much. So how about starting with some light cleaning? "It could be good for rehabilitation," I suggested. "That's a good idea. I don't know if this hand will ever fully recover, but it's better than doing nothing. But on one condition, don't overdo it, got it?" I wouldn't want to be scolded. It's scary to make you angry. Justin acted as if nothing was wrong, making it clear that he didn't want to make me worry. So I resolved to work even harder for the both of us. However, I had forgotten about one person who would interfere, Valerie. "Wait a minute. What's the matter? Why is Justin cleaning? You must have forced him to do it, right? Your words are just a friend," my mother-in-law accused. She judged things only by what she saw, oblivious to the underlying thoughts and emotions. Dealing with that was a challenge in itself. "You're always just cooped up in your room, playing around. Honestly, in such a situation with your husband seriously injured. Actually, I'm working. It's called remote work these days," I defended. "I've had enough of that excuse," my mother-in-law replied. "It's not an excuse," I said. Just then, my mother-in-law grabbed a nearby trash can and threw it at me. Luckily, it didn't hit me directly, but the trash went everywhere. I lost the energy to explain things to her further. It was clear from the start that she had no intention of listening. "This trash is disgusting. Clean it up yourself," she said, as I sighed and started picking it up. Justin approached me and asked, "Hey, what happened?" "Oh, this is just a small incident," I replied with a forced smile. But Justin seemed to have realized something. He usually appears calm, but sometimes he's surprisingly perceptive. "Did Mom do something?" Are you hiding something? Can you be honest with me?" Justin was looking at me with a serious expression. Seeing his face, I felt that I couldn't lie, so I told him what had happened. Got it. I'll talk to Mom about this. Oh, it's fine, you really. But it's not okay. I'll talk to her properly. No, but that is. I was happy to get his help, but I was worried about what would come next. In the end, I would be the one blamed. I stared at the ceiling, deep in thought. Night came, and I thought Valerie was just playing around. That's not true. Valerie has been working hard, even my share. Then why were you cleaning? I offered to do it. I can't just sit around doing nothing at home. But you just got out of the hospital. I know my own body best. Justin's stern words silenced his mother. She might not have expected her son to speak to her like that. But if she really does think that she's above such things, she's just arrogant. I hoped that this would calm her down a bit. That day, Justin went out for rehabilitation, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. As I was working in my room as usual, she showed up. Can we talk? Sorry, can you wait just a bit? About 15 more minutes? No, I can't wait right now. All right, I'm coming. I hurried along and went to the living room where an unknown woman was waiting for us. Excuse me, who is this? Have a seat first, we'll talk. After that, I had no choice but to follow my mother-in-law, but I couldn't grasp the situation. As I was trying to figure it out, the woman started speaking. So this is the one you were talking about, the wife who just plays around without working. Yes, it's true. My mother-in-law was laughing eerily. So you realize that you're an unnecessary presence in this house. What are you talking about? Looking around, I saw them sighing. I didn't understand. Suddenly confronted by a stranger and put down as the target of blame. If I could, I would have left that place in an instant. Don't you understand? Unnecessary people are not needed here. What do you mean? More perplexing questions followed. They kept insisting on how incompetent I was. Enduring such accusations could mentally exhaust anyone. Isn't it time you realize your place? Shouldn't I be asking you? How dare a daughter-in-law toy her mother-in-law? Spending time on such unproductive things, isn't it a waste of time? What nerve of a daughter-in-law, really now? I felt like I was reaching my limit. I didn't know what my mother-in-law would do if she got angrier. That's when I came up with an idea. Oh, isn't it about time that Justin comes back from rehab? Is it that time already? Just then, the unknown woman left quickly. I'll come again soon. Okay, I'll be waiting for you. Let's talk again. My mother-in-law and her friend were fooled. In reality, Justin wouldn't be home for another hour. It was just getting good. Speaking of which, who was that woman? I finally asked a question that had been on my mind. That's Susan, a close friend of mine. She wanted to meet you after hearing about you. It wasn't hard to guess how my mother-in-law had introduced me, probably as a useless wife who does nothing but play around. I sighed when mother-in-law for doing nothing else but that. So that's the case? Well, Justin will be back a bit later. I'm going back to work now, I said. As I was about to return to my room, she said, Wait, what do you mean? Just as I said, he's not coming back yet. You lied. You didn't realize. Why do you act like this? I decided to use this opportunity to speak my mind. Any further interference from my mother-in-law would just be a nuisance. Actually, you were the one who started things, right? You called your friend because you can't do anything alone. That's not true. I can handle you fine by myself. Then why don't you try to see if you really can? I deliberately provoked my mother-in-law, thinking this would prompt her to take some action. And as expected, she reacted. If you want to apologize, now is the time. I have no such intention, I said. At that, my mother-in-law exploded in anger, grabbing a nearby vase and throwing it at me, similar to how she had previously thrown the trash can. I had anticipated it and easily dodged, even showing a provocative smile. Just then, Justin came home. My mother-in-law was visibly shaken. Why are you home already? It's not time yet. Oh, sorry, I lied earlier. I was actually on my way back. Why would you do that? Justin asked. Isn't it obvious? I said, pointing to the shattered vase. I couldn't help but find the situation amusing. Hey, what's this? What happened? Justin asked. Your mom threw it at me. What? You mean? A lady just came over, claiming to be your mom's friend. I told Justin everything that happened. He showed a mix of surprise and anger. Is that true, Mom? Well, so it's true then. Why would you do that? I didn't mean to, my mother-in-law muttered. Watching my mother-in-law being scolded, I felt a sense of retribution for all the hardships I had endured. Well, I have something to do, so okay, Justin said. Ignoring my mother-in-law's words, I returned to my room, thinking this would end her bullying. I truly believed it. After that, calm days continued for a while. But having stayed up all night, I had dozed off past noon. Sorry to wake you, but can you come here for a moment? Justin asked. Okay, sure, I replied. Justin seemed unusually serious. My mother-in-law was there in the living room. What's going on? Look at this, Justin said. I looked at the table to find a disassembled plastic model scattered about. It was one of Justin's hobbies, and he had treasured it. When I came home, it was like this. Do you know anything? No, I have no clue, I replied. I couldn't think of any reason for it. This plastic model was in my father-in-law's room before, but of course, I hadn't been in that room today, nor had I entered it recently. Someone must have broken it for it to be like this, Justin said. My eyes naturally turned towards my mother-in-law. She was the only suspect. My mother-in-law had a strange, eerie smile on her face, like she was possessed. I understood the situation. Even if someone broke it, I was out. I met Justin on my way back from Susan's place, remember? Yes, but... And then I found this in the room, my mother-in-law said, holding a shiny object. Is that an earring? I instinctively checked my own ears. My left earring was missing. I was certain of my suspicions. It was clear revenge on me for last time. This is yours, isn't it, Mallory? And it looks like only the left one is missing, Justin said. I took a deep breath. Showing anger now would mean that I would be playing into her hands. Indeed, it's mine. But isn't it premature to conclude that I broke it? Making excuses is so unbecoming. We have evidence. Anyway, it's broken. Wait a minute, Justin said, leaving the room. At that moment, my mother-in-law's gaze was fixed on me. The situation made me feel like Justin saw me as a criminal, and I just stood there stunned. It's a shame. This would have been the end of you if you did it. You set a trap, didn't you? You'll find no evidence anywhere. If only you had followed my advice, this wouldn't have happened, my mother-in-law said. If I explain things to him properly, he'll understand, won't he? I asked. Her words became reality. No matter how much I insisted to Justin that it wasn't my fault, he wouldn't take me seriously. I haven't done anything wrong, maybe. I get it, Justin interrupted, immediately averting his gaze. Laughter echoed from behind us. See, I told you so. What does that matter? It's sad that you don't want to admit defeat. After that, I immersed myself in work. It was almost like escaping from reality. Conversations with Justin became less frequent, and about 2 weeks went by during this time. My mother-in-law seemed quite pleased with herself. You seem down lately. Is there something troubling you? There's no need for you to worry. Please stop. It's too late for that. Acting tough is useless on this day. My mother-in-law was in an especially good mood. My feeling of foreboding came true, eventually becoming reality. It happened while I was cleaning the room. Why are you even in this house? You're like a parasite living off of us here. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? You always talk back. Such a noisy daughter-in-law, she said. After saying that, she threw my belongings out of the window. What are you doing? I protested her insane actions, questioning what had gotten into her. You're too noisy, always talking back. Can you pick my stuff up, please? I said, hoping for some reason to prevail. But as I said that, my mother-in-law put a knife to my throat. I was frozen in fear, unable to move. It's better if you stay still. A normal person wouldn't do this, I managed to utter. My mother-in-law was clearly deranged. If you don't leave now, next time it won't be just a joke, she threatened. I understand. I'll leave, I said, realizing that staying would only drag me further into her madness. You have a week. Leave before then. Thank you, she said. It was evident that staying would only worsen things in her madness. My mother-in-law didn't understand who truly supported this house. She lived comfortably and leisurely thanks to me, yet she really knew nothing. Pack up quickly, she ordered, and I obliged. A smile formed on my lips as I bowed my head, but I couldn't let her suspect anything. I quickly composed my face. This will bring peace back to our home. I'm so happy, she remarked. But her happiness was short-lived. I couldn't help but think about the true hell awaiting her. After my mother-in-law had gone to bed, I explained the situation to Justin. I see, so it has come to this. Actually, I have something to tell you too, he said with a serious tone, surprising me. What? I asked. Various things. We'll talk about it later, he replied, his serious tone making me raise my voice in surprise. But he assured me we'd discuss it later. 3 days after being told to leave the house by my mother-in-law, I found a new place. Now the promised week was almost up. Well, today's the day of the promise. You understand, right? I asked Justin. Yes, the movers are scheduled to arrive soon, he replied. But when I inquired about Justin's whereabouts, he seemed to have gone out since the morning. Well, never mind. The thought of not having to see your face anymore is enough. I'm going out now. Make sure everything's clean, understood? I told my mother-in-law, smiling though not genuinely. An hour later, the moving company arrived and loaded all my belongings. I contacted Justin. All packed up, got it. Just make sure you get there safely, okay? See you later, he said, ending the call. I was excited to think about what would happen when my mother-in-law returned. Finally, the moment of completing the move arrived. What have you done? Justin's belongings are nowhere to be found, my mother-in-law exclaimed. Of course, we moved out together. No way. Do you want to check with him? I got out my phone, sent it to speaker, and handed it to my mother-in-law, who still couldn't grasp the situation. Justin confirmed the plan, leaving my mother-in-law bewildered. This was my plan all along, Mom, I admitted. What's happening? Tell me, she pleaded. Actually, about the model kit incident, we know that you did it, Justin declared, putting an end to her denials. There's no way Valerie would do such a thing, he added, defending me. Why do you think that? Because it was a gift from Valerie. She wouldn't break it on purpose, Justin reasoned. My mother-in-law was at a loss for words, realizing that she had been supported by the very person she had mistreated.
Well then, you'll have to manage on your own from here on out, Justin concluded. But I don't work if you two leave me, she said, coming to terms with the consequences of her actions. Mom, it's no longer our business. Well, it's time for each of us to do our best, Justin remarked, ending the conversation. We felt relieved. We had hoped for a good relationship at first, but quickly gave up. Now my mother-in-law chose her own fate. But why did you keep it a secret about that? What about Mom? I asked in disbelief. We looked at each other and burst out laughing. Finally, we could have a peaceful life together. About a month later, Justin expressed some doubts. You seem down lately. Is there something troubling you? There's no need for you to worry. Please stop. It's too late for that. Acting tough is useless, I assure him. On this day, my mother-in-law was in an especially good mood. My feeling of foreboding came true, eventually becoming reality.
I never expected you to be hoarding like that. After all, we're a married couple. There's no reason I shouldn't utilize our shared assets. It's even worse to hide it while looking down on me. My husband and mother-in-law continued to talk as they pleased, and I grew increasingly disgusted with them. Finally, I decided to confront them with reality. By the way, have you checked the name on the past book? I interjected, exasperated. My name is Lillian, and I'm turning 42 this year. I've been married for 17 years, and before that, I worked at a company. After getting married, I quit my job and started working part-time at a local supermarket. I met my husband, Easton, at work, and at the time, I thought he was an ordinary and kind man. That perception changed about 6 months into our marriage. One day while I was preparing dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly visited our house without any notice. My husband hadn't come home from work yet, and I thought there might be some urgent matters, so I let her in. As soon as she saw the living room, she let out a big sigh. "Lillian, you've been idly watching TV until this hour. My son Easton is still working hard, sweating at his job. Don't you feel sorry?" she scolded. Yes, I did have the TV on, but until a moment ago, I had been preparing dinner in the kitchen. You might say I'm lazing around, but I finished my housework in the morning, and I just returned from shopping after my part-time job, I replied, irritated but trying to maintain composure. She ostentatiously snorted, went into the kitchen, and started finding fault with dinner. "Oh dear, is this all we have for dinner today? Poor Eon working so hard. I've planned for curry and salad today. The salad is in the fridge. How could you let Easton eat such a half-baked meal? I wonder what you've learned at home," she'd insulted, not just targeting me but also my parents. Finally, losing my patience, I asked a bit harshly, "Didn't you need something?" My mother-in-law opened her eyes wide in fox innocence. "Oh my, don't get so mad just because I looked at dinner. What do you need then?" I retorted, exasperated. "It's not what do you need. Don't you think you should offer something to your mother-in-law who was kindly visited?" "Excuse me, you're such an inconsiderate person," she chastised, settling heavily on the sofa to watch TV. I served her tea, but she complained about everything, including the taste, saying it was cheap. Back then, I was young and avoiding arguments with my husband's mother, wondering if I should be considerate to her. However, taking advantage of the fact that neither my husband nor I said anything, my mother-in-law began to frequently visit our home, constantly complaining about my cleanliness, laziness, and lack of discipline. After being criticized at every turn, I was truly at my wit's end and decided to consult my husband about his mother. "Hey, could you ask your mom to reduce the number of times she comes to our house?" I pleaded. "Why is it that much of a bother when Mom comes over? You've seen it, haven't you? No matter how much I work on the house or cooking, your mom keeps complaining about me," I explained. "Well, that's because Mom wants you, Lillian, to work harder, so she gets tough. I'm doing my best, but as she comes over without notice, I struggle to prepare dinner properly. If it bothers you, speak up for yourself, but remember, Mom cares about us too." My husband remained indifferent. No matter how much effort I put into cleaning or cooking, my mother-in-law would nitpick, never once praising me. Once the vegetables my mother-in-law brought were clearly close to expiration, so I used them for dinner. She conspicuously scoffed at serving such withered vegetables to her son and herself. That moment, I realized she just wanted to bully me. Persistently criticized, I consulted my father-in-law. When I explained the difficulty of preparing meals for my mother-in-law and the problem of her frequent unannounced visits, he seemed unaware and politely apologized. "I thought she was going out to dinner with friends. I didn't realize she was bothering you, Lillian. I'm sorry," he said. "It's not something for you to apologize for. I've been giving her money for meals, assuming she was dining out, but she hasn't been taking it," I replied. "Unfortunately, no. I'm really sorry," my father-in-law apologized repeatedly. He promised to speak sternly to my mother-in-law, and I thought that would be enough. But then I received a phone call filled with scathing remarks from my mother-in-law. "Hello, you're really on call. Paddling to my husband like that. I've been going out of my way to check on you. and I didn't expect you to repay my kindness with such ingratitude." "That's not true. I'm not repaying kindness with ingratitude. You should be the one apologizing. It's audacious to claim your inconvenience. I'm educating you in areas where your upbringing was lacking. You should be grateful." My mother-in-law asserted, "I understand what you're saying, but it is inconvenient when you show up without notice. Shouldn't a mother need to make an appointment to visit her own son's house? My parents wouldn't do that." I countered. "How brazen you are as a daughter-in-law. You should adapt to the rules of your husband's family, no matter what," she retorted, growing increasingly heated until she was yelling so loud I couldn't understand her. And then she hung up. I suspected she called during my father-in-law's absence, so I hesitated to consult him again, fearing more of the same. Despite a slight decrease in frequency, my mother-in-law persisted in visiting our home. My husband, finding solace in complaining about work to her and receiving her sympathy, showed no signs of persuading her to stop the visits any time soon. Witnessing his attitude, my mother-in-law became even more cheerful, and they both began to blame me. "Lillian, you don't show enough respect to Mom," my husband chimed in. "That's right. Tell her more." "I'm only getting a small allowance, even though I'm the one earning the money," my mother-in-law complained. They continued to eat the meals I prepared while complaining about them, chatting and laughing in a living room I had just cleaned. When washing the dishes, my husband would demand, "At least prepare the bath," expecting me to get everything ready from bath towels to his pajamas. My mother-in-law didn't reprimand him, but instead sided with him, saying, "Poor thing, having such an inconsiderate wife." I consulted with my father-in-law again, receiving yet another profuse apology, but I was exhausted with the fact that my mother-in-law's actions remained unchanged. Days passed in the same manner until one day I noticed that a necklace handed down to me by my own mother was missing. When I asked my husband, he claimed he didn't know and coldly dismissed me with, "You probably lost it due to your own carelessness. It was supposed to be in my drawer." The truth came out when my mother-in-law visited our home again during dinner time. Mother-in-law, that necklace," I started, but she interrupted me. "Oh dear, it's quite disgraceful to desire something someone else is wearing," she retorted, wearing the very necklace I had lost. It had a unique, unusual design with a peculiar ornament unmistakable to me. "When you accuse me of stealing from you, it not only reveals your upbringing, but also labels me a criminal," she added with a triumphant smile. Provoked beyond restraint, I reached for her necklace. My mother-in-law purposefully screamed, and just then my husband, who had returned home earlier than usual, opened the front door. Seeing me, he pushed me hard, causing me to crash into the wall and crouch down in pain. He then turned to me, accusing, just like Mom said, "You've been bullying her while I'm not here, haven't you?" "That's right, Easton. Lillian is really terrible," my mother-in-law chimed in. "I just wanted to get along," I pleaded. "No, listen, the necklace your mother is wearing is the one I said I lost." I didn't want to hear any excuses. I pleaded. "Mom, let's eat out tonight." "You better reflect on your actions," my husband declared, pulling my mother-in-law away. "Such a sweet boy Easton really is a good son," she praised, leaving with my husband. The shock of not being able to retrieve my necklace, along with the anger towards my husband for siding with my mother-in-law without even listening to me, made my pent-up frustrations explode that same day. I decided to take revenge once again. I had a talk with my father-in-law while he apologized to me. He listened attentively to my story. I discovered that he was also fed up with my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior. During this conversation, I decided to devise a plan. When my mother-in-law, as usual, came to our house without learning her lesson, flaunting the necklace and enjoying my reaction, I deliberately told her I forgot to buy something. "Could you look after the house for a bit?" Normally she would have retorted with something scathing, but this time she smiled sweetly and agreed, saying, "Of course, why don't you take your time? You're always busy with housework. Thank you." Leaving my mother-in-law at home, I went out alone to the supermarket parking lot, holding my pounding heart, testing the malice of those close to me. If I could get definitive evidence, I could take my revenge. Yet part of me also hoped that my mother-in-law and husband would reflect on their actions and change. Exactly 30 minutes later, I returned home with shopping bags. What greeted me was my mother-in-law in the living room, messily eating dinner with my husband. "Oh, you were late, so we started without you." "Today's dinner was more plain than usual," my husband remarked. "Don't be sorry for Mom, but I asked mother-in-law to watch the house because I forgot to buy something," I interjected. "No more excuses. Be careful next time," my husband retorted, acting even more arrogant because of my mother-in-law's presence. I couldn't help but sigh. Looking at the pot with only bits of vegetables left, I felt more disgusted than angry at my husband, who didn't even think to leave some food for me. I realized there was likely no future where these two would reflect on their actions. After cleaning up dinner, I checked what happened to the trap. As expected, it seemed like the trap had been set off. Seeing it, my husband smirked, mocking me, looking uglier than ever. His triumphant smile resembled my mother-in-law's when she showed off the necklace. I couldn't help but laugh, realizing that the day of revenge came sooner than I thought. On my husband's day off, both him and my mother-in-law called me to the living room. Seeing the two of them in high spirits, I sat across from them, pretending to know nothing. "Hey, why didn't you tell us?" "What are you talking about?" I feigned innocence. "If you had that much money, you could have told us." "Now you can show filial pity to Mom too," my husband chided. "I don't understand what you're talking about," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Don't play dumb." "We're talking about your bank book," my mother-in-law interjected. "Oh," I managed to say without showing any signs of panic. They happily started laying out the estimate papers for a single-family house on the table. "Mom and Dad, you and me, we bought a new 2-family house," my husband announced. "But what do you mean? Why are you moving forward with this without me?" I questioned. "Lillian, you really do hate me, don't you? That's why you're saying you don't want to live together," my husband accused. "Hey, cut it out. You're being rude," my mother-in-law scolded him. "Who's being rude? It's far more disrespectful for you two to use my money without my permission," I retorted. "People with bad upbringing really have bad mouths," my mother-in-law snapped back. I struggled to suppress a laugh at the two of them, amazed at how terrible they truly were. I had become hardened, but my resolve to take revenge never wavered because it was these two who had melded me this way. "We found a perfect newly built property for sale, so we've already signed a contract. No matter what you say, it's too late now anyway. I didn't know you were saving up that much. Besides, we're married, so there's no reason for you to complain about using our shared property," my husband declared. "That's right. It's worse to hide it," my mother-in-law chimed in. By the way, did you check the name on the bank book?" I interrupted. The two of them froze at my words. Seeing that, I finally couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. They checked the name on the bank book and then looked at me with faces drained of blood. "What the hell is this? It's exactly what you're seeing. Why is it under our person's name?" my husband exclaimed. "I never said it was my bank book," I stated plainly. "So what does that mean?" "You stole Dad's bank book, you thief," my husband accused. "Who's the thief?" "You went out of your way to pry open a locked drawer and took it, but you were hiding it so carefully," I accused back. "Oh, so it's okay to steal things that your daughter-in-law treasures? I guess that's how you were raised, mother-in-law," I retorted. Don't talk back to Mom. You should watch your mouth, my husband interjected. Do you know why father-in-law gave this to me? I questioned. Why? What are you saying? My husband asked. I heard from father-in-law about the reason mother-in-law has been spending so much money lately. You two took a vacation while taking time off from work, didn't you? Well, that's it. It seems you told the company whatever you wanted as the reason for taking time off, like I had a fever or went back to my parents' home, I revealed. I received a call from the department head, and he was speechless when I told him the truth. I continued. Finally realizing their predicament, the two exchanged troubled glances. But I had no intention of forgiving them over something like this. While we were silent, the door conveniently rang. When I went to the entrance and brought the visitor into the living room, the two let out a small scream. It was my mother-in-law who had come to our house unannounced. I contacted my father-in-law. Why are you here? I've told you countless times not to cause trouble for Lillian, he admonished. But there are no buts. When will you two start behaving properly? Dad, I interjected. She had your bank book, my husband blurted out. So what? Are you calling her she now? My father-in-law retorted. I didn't raise you to be so rude. You're old enough to know better. It's embarrassing to hear you calling Mom all the time. If you can't treasure your wife, what's the point of calling her she? If you say that she has treasured me too, are you saying you are not being treasured? My husband countered. I've been working so as not to cause you trouble, and I thought I'd managed to save a decent amount of money. I've tried my best to give you both financial freedom, allowing you to do as you please. And now you expect me to turn a blind eye to the mistreatment of your wife. Throughout this exchange, whenever they tried to make an excuse, my father-in-law would fire back, unfazed, until they were rendered speechless. He delivered the final blow to the two who were shrinking and hanging their heads. By the way, about the bank book, I left with Lillian. I told her to take it as a nuisance fee, because I felt bad about how much trouble you two have been causing. No matter how much I warn you, you continue, and you two even bought a house with that stolen money. What more should I do for you? The two couldn't say anything, and my mother-in-law ended up being taken home by my father-in-law. Before she left, I pointed at her neck and was able to safely recover the necklace. Seeing this, my husband guessed what had happened and forced his mother to bow her head in the now quiet living room. I handed the divorce papers to my husband, who was completely deflated. Why? What do you mean, why? He stammered. After all this, you still think we can stay married. But you're only mad at Mom. Of course, I'm disgusted with you too. No, I want a divorce, he protested. Then shall we go to court? We'd have to expose everything you've done to the court and your company, though, I countered. Oh yes, we've got it all on camera. You two breaking open the lock and taking the bank book clearly shows you two desperately breaking a lock, my father-in-law added. No, you're lying. It's amazing how you can call others thieves after doing such a thing, my husband exclaimed. All of that will be made public, and you'll probably have to cover the $300,000 you used of your father-in-law's money, my compensation, and the court fees. What are you going to do? I asked calmly. Why can you say such cruel things? You still don't get it. Should we have your father lecture again? My husband replied. I accepted the divorce papers from my dejected husband and finally became a free woman. As for the $300,000 I received from my father-in-law, I decided to accept it again as a nuisance and consolation fee for my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. Under my father-in-law's supervision, the two of them had to work tirelessly to repay him. A total of 60 million yen later, I received an email from my ex-husband to a free email address, seemingly asking for reconciliation, but I ignored and deleted it. Thanks to being freed from my source of stress, my health has improved, and I'm spending my time freely with the money I received from my father-in-law.